Okay. All right, Andrew.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today at the Norwich Forum Construction Industry Talk today. We are very kindly being joined by Andrew Savage. I'm sure a lot of you know him, Executive Development Director of Broadland Housing Association, who is going to tell us the North Norfolk story. Broadland Housing Association have been delivering some exciting housing developments across North Norfolk, which are not only incorporating best designs, but also moving towards the net zero policy as well. So I am very pleased that Andrew can join us and explain more about this today. And so I think I'll hand straight over. Andrew, over to you.
Great, Ian, thank you very much. And hi, everyone. I'm just going to make sure that we can see that. I've lost Ian completely now. So Ian, can you tell me you can see that?
I can, yep.
That's great. Okay, super. I'm just going to do this, please. Thank you. That's great. That's gone whole screen, I hope. And fingers crossed, there is a slide in here, ladies and gentlemen, that has got music and things in it. So I'm really hoping that that plays. If not, bear with me at that point in time, please. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for letting me come today. This is a piece of work that Broadland Housing carried out over a number of years, and I'll go through why it's been so important to us. And also, we've got a bit more, Ian's asked me to do a little bit more of our future gazing as well, and I've got some of that at the end as well, which goes beyond what the work here, but some of the work that we're doing at the moment. Once upon a time, this is the story, the North Norfolk story. There was two organisations, Broadland Housing Association, of course, where, as you know, we're a local housing association that covers the whole of Norfolk and North Suffolk. We've got 5,300 plus houses now within that area, and growing at about 150 houses or flats a year. North Norfolk District Council, a really important partner and for the housing association, and back in sort of the 2012, 2013, both organisations started to see that the affordable housing delivery was slowing down and potentially slowing to a halt in North Norfolk. So we started to have a conversation about this. Relationship has always been very good in North Norfolk with the District Council. The young lady at the time, Nicola Turner, was one of our main contacts there in strategic housing. But right across the piece, we've had a really good relationship with them. We had a very successful scheme at Formston, which was our first passive house scheme. And that sort of paved the way really for the future conversations. We heard at the time pulled out of the what was the Homes England grant programme at the time, and that was quite a major point for Broadland in its development career. I think myself and Michael worry the development team when you see you're pulling out of something and there's no grant funding coming. What do you do? So we had to really sort of looking at how to reinvent the delivery model. Conversation continued because there was planning changes at the time. The national planning framework had opened up on exception sites. Now, exception sites, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is where a housing association can build on the boundary or on the edge of a village, as long as there's a need in that village for affordable housing, and as long as it's alongside 10 other dwellings. So that's what's sort of classified as a village in terms of that policy. It had opened up to start to include market housing, as long as that market housing was cross-subsidising. We had to try and find a solution for Broadland St Benedict's. Broadland St Benedict's was our open market company and still is our open market company. At the time, it had no equity funding to go into it. We were struggling to get it off the ground at the time because of the constraints we had within the association and the way that we could on-lend from the association to that market company. It's a private limited company. rural housing, we've challenged on cost, and as we all know at the moment, that's an interesting debate anyway on cost at the moment and the way that is going. But even at the time, rural housing has always been very expensive. It's very infrastructure led. And design was an increasing hurdle. We were getting very, very interesting discussions at parish council level and also consultation level, where people were saying, why are you putting this design in our village? That's not what this village looks like. Affordable housing hadn't got a very good track record really about designing villages at the time. This was Formerston. This was our passive house, which we did with Norfolk District Council. It's timber frame. It was built by Lovell. Simon very kindly helped us go through the pain of trying to build this back in 2012, 2013. It was interesting because it was used in Norfolk because it hadn't been done. It was used in Norfolk to look at passive house, and a lot of the local authorities looked at passive at the time. And actually this is where the Goldsmith story really started. It won the 2014 Best New Affordable Housing Scheme in the UK at the time, and it was a finalist in the Passive House Awards, beaten by another passive house scheme, been Burnham Overy Stave by Hasto at the time. So it's lovely to see two actually in that awards at the time. So what could a solution look like? So when talking to North Norfolk, they had a little bit of land left, which was very, very helpful. We needed to get a return on that land for them. A lot of the time people think we get affordable housing for nothing, land for nothing. We just go and find it in local authorities, land banks, and say we need that for affordable. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. So we knew we need to get a return on the land for them. We were looking at the planning changes, as I discussed before, and we really, as a lot of you know, I do like to maximise how the planning works and how we can squeeze the policy as much as possible. So it really was in our thought line is how can we maximise this planning arena. At the time, funding would be required, of course, for Broadland St Benedict's if we were able to get market housing. So we started to talk about how that could work with North Norfolk, and how could delivery in one village support another. It was a thought I'd had for a number of years, where exception site housing is only allowed to fund, or was only allowed to fund, in that village. So if you did any market housing, it could only cross-subsidise that scheme. So it's really a thought in my mind, how could maybe a more expensive area of North Norfolk fund a cheaper area of North Norfolk? Market housing had to reflect the community as well as the affordable. So we weren't thinking about going to villages and just building 6-bedroom houses. We needed to go in and say to the village, what does that need look like as well? That was absolutely crucial to us. We wanted to improve not only our design, but affordable housing design generally. And could we do it without grant? As you remember, that was one of my constraints when we started thinking about this project. So this is the first idea. This was actually the fag packet, near enough, that we put down on it was a flip chart at the time, not a fag packet, you'll be pleased to hear. But there's two companies, Broadland Housing, Broadland St Benedict's. We had to try and work out how we get funding into it. How did the 106 work? Which company actually built them at the time? How do we get money out of Broadland St Benedict's into Broadland Housing Association? There was a lovely thing called gift aid. We're coming out of a limited company into a charity. And then how do we get funding in? Could we ask NNDC for equity funding? Could we get some loans in there? And then, of course, paying all that back in the periods of time. So basic development thoughts in all, but we had a few nuances in there that we had to work through. So this was the result in the conversations, was basically we identified 5 sites in the NNDC portfolio that have been sitting there for a number of years. I knew of a couple of them, but didn't realise the extent of what they had actually in the asset management side. 5 villages: we looked Great Ryborough, Binham, Edgefield, Erpingham, and Trunch up in northeast Norfolk. We needed some additional land at Edgefield. We found that it was slightly landlocked, the site, so we got hold of Stoddy Estate, who owned, as people know, parts of Edgefield. Had very, very good conversations with them. And then at the time, BHA owned a site in Bodham. It's phase 2 of a site in Bodham, and we put that into the mix as well. So we had a number of landowners. So the project put together about 112 houses. We had a 64% affordable mix in that, 36% market. Sites were connected, and this is the little trick, and it will come through in the video in a minute, by a single section 106, and I'll explain that in a little bit more. We had one viability that went right across, so that was my bit about trying to move money from village to village. As you can see with the section 106 now allows. Land value was £1 million plus through here, so North Norfolk were getting a much better return than they thought they would in the first place. And then it was a very clever loan arrangement between NFCI and both Broadland Housing and BSB. It didn't quite get used in the end because of other changes within Broadland at the time, where on lending actually happened while we were in contract to build. So that made it a little bit easier. But actually, in the first instance, we set up loan arrangements between the local authority and the housing associations. So I'm just going to put you through a video, and I hope the music comes, and Ian's going to have to put his thumb up if it's working. This was part of a video we put in for submission for the RTPI, if I get it right, is New England Awards back in 2020, which it won, and then represented the East in the National Awards for Planning Excellence 2021, which we actually won our category in April. So very chuffed, to be honest with you, about that. It's you know, there's a lot of awards out there, but this one was, you know, really important to us. It was part of what we were trying to achieve in the first place. So sit back, and I hope this is going to work. Ian, is that working?
Delivery of local rural housing was slowing down, and the funding model was impacting on this delivery of new affordable housing. What Broadland Housing wanted to achieve was to firstly create a sustainable delivery model for rural housing. Secondly, improve design within building projects. Local communities were resisting new development in villages. Design was part of the issue and was raised at local consultations. And thirdly, to work within the changes to the national planning framework, so Broadland could maximise the use of exception site planning policy. So, a project plan was developed between Broadland Development Team, the wider consultant team, and North Norfolk Strategic Housing Team. The framework for our project was based on cross-subsidy, created from open market housing sales to fund affordable housing delivery. Exception site planning criteria changed to include market sales as long as they did the viability of individual schemes and did not make excess surplus. So 5 sites were identified across the North Norfolk district, a combination of land within NFCI ownership and third-party landowners. Crucially, Broadland created a land value for all landowners, including NFCI. The team created 96 plots across the 5 sites, 61 affordable and 35 open market. The project produced a return of 63% affordable housing, all with local lettings and local sales criteria attached. As the project progressed and local housing need was looked into in more depth, the tenure mix unfolded in each of the 5 villages. Some villages have more affordable need, others were more viable through higher market sales values. Exception site policy had been about individual villages and the supply of housing to that individual village. What the Broadland team negotiated was a single Section 106 across all 5 locations. This allowed surplus monies from one village to help finance affordable housing within another. A very simple change. However, this allowed Broadland to deliver a much more strategic view and delivery of a range of housing to the local communities of North Norfolk. In addition, this allowed the design team more freedom to develop designs for each individual site that reflected the village, built on the traditional feel of North Norfolk villages, but adding a contemporary touch where appropriate, so improving the whole design of a Broadland project. The collaboration between the wider Broadland team has created a project to 5 sites that has achieved what the organisation set out to do. However, the personal stories are sometimes much more important, such as helping a daughter return to the village of Trunch. She was able to rent the house that backs onto her mother's existing bungalow, Broadland then put a gate in the fence for them to be able to see each other. This is the achievement of something quite special, created from using national planning policy at a very local level.
Thank you for listening to that. I didn't play the piano, by the way. But as you can tell, it was my dulcet tones. We did that in lockdown 1, so it was a really interesting way of trying to put it together. And I thank Steve Whisker at Bourne for doing it. So you can see the numbers changed because we added bottom in to the mix as well. That's why the numbers were changed in the video. And the 106 went over those 5 sites rather than just the bottom one as well. So that's why the numbers were different. So some of the other outputs, which not only the housing, was design. So it's one of the drivers of the model. We could use bottom already had planning, so we could use that as the base of the model. But we developed standard house types, as you can see here. All the floor plates are the same. We still use them as well. They are starting to change for the future now. But we're trying to do what other people are doing. Basic stuff really. Landscape road layouts, they became really more important to us. We design with landscape first, and then we design plots. So it just tries to bring that environment together. Big issue with road systems, but I'll go into that in a little bit later. And it's all really done because we've been trying to second guess the timeline for building reg changes once the Code for Sustainable Homes disappeared and building regs took over. And so a lot of it has been trying to get the, as people do know, fabric first, all the frames sorted first in this project. And then I'll talk about where we're going further later on. So this was the first phase of bottom, which we built in 2008. As you can see, we started to put flint in. I started to put a little bit of estate fencing in, etc. But the road is still incredibly grey, unfortunately. This is the second phase of bottom, and you can see the change just in our thought line in that period of time. There's 6 or 7 years of thoughts all the way through. And you can see the difference in the way that we're setting out the schemes as well. And that was a big learning for us. I know it's basics for a lot of people, but we were entering a different phase of where our design and where our housing was going. The highway spec, that is black. It frustrates me, as if people know me well. I hate highways in terms of the blackness of everything, the adopting nature and etc. And I think, to be honest with you, it ruins some of the schemes. But we've tried to work with highways and trying to get better and better at it. But unfortunately, that's one of my bugbears of life. The other outputs was planning. Pushing the boundaries sometimes needs a rethink in approach. We had to really be as collaborative and as patient as we possibly can. Not just with the planners, because actually we were pushing boundaries at the time for the planners, but it was a sort of open door once we got there and explained what we were trying to do. Parish councils, of course, all have a different makeup. We had happy parish councils, we had sad parish councils, but in the end I think the outputs helped, and what that output brought to the village. And now we are getting referrals just on the back of this project from those parish councils, which is great. The viability approach was very different. It wasn't single schemes. It was a complete viability approach over all 5 schemes. And some people would say that's dangerous. If you didn't do one, then, where do you go with it? But we were committed in the way that we had to do this project. We were committed on all 5 sites at the same time. So it made sense. And we had a planning committee meeting all in one day, all the sites. Binham got chucked out actually in the first round of that. So we had 4, so we were taking a risk. We needed Binham, as you can imagine, because of the values there. So we had to go back in with that, and it showed that there was a robust approach at North Norfolk. They weren't just nodding things through because it was a really good project for them. There was a very robust approach taken, which I thank them for, because I think Binham became a better scheme because of it. And something we learned big time is our team of consultants was superb, and it really does pay off once you've you know some of these guys and girls for a long time. So, we nearly had 12 years of working with some of these people, and that time really does pay off. So, but of course, procurement gets in the way when you're a housing association sometimes. So, construction. The question was asked, why not passive or green credentials? You didn't see an awful lot of solar panels on this, and we didn't, after the 2014, do much passive after that. It was because we were thinking about design. I'll be honest, bluntly honest. We were trying to create a product. If I'm going to go into marketing speak, we were trying to look at the future. We have always been very, very forward thinking in terms of our frames and the way. So we still kept that in there. So actually, if the solar panel did break in the future, the frame would have been okay anyway. So that's really important to us, to make sure that actual structure of the house is operating. And now, with the schemes that we're starting to go on site, we are building regs for next year, and we're not actually that far off 2025, the Future Home Standard, at the moment as well. So we procured separate contractors on separate tenders, which was interesting. But I think it worked actually, because we did get a different viewpoint, and we did try and get the contractor for the scheme, and I think it really did work in general. We didn't quite get the correct match with one of them maybe, but I actually think we've worked that through, and we're working with that contractor still, and it was actually really good for our relationship, because we had some really good discussions. There will be, and of course there's limitations to our approach. Trying to bring 5 sites together with maybe 5 individual landowners is going to be it's a lot of work. We've already tried to do that already, and it is very time consuming, a lot of work, and doesn't necessarily fit. But we understand that the model that we have here, we can do it on individual sites, or we can do it together. So, and then after sales, that was new to us really. I mean, we run defects, of course, and we got shared ownership defects, but actually true after sales, I take my hat off to residential developers, is really important, and we've learned through that, and we've made changes along the way. So this is in terms of Chapter 4 construction. We learned an awful lot. This was Binham, actually, about timing of construction, with market sales included as well, and when I want to bring those out. So actually Binham we got completely wrong at the time. We actually got the stuff at the front going up, which actually you would do, but they were the most complicated build on the site, and actually took much longer, so we didn't get them out in time. So there's really big learnings for us when we went down into this level. Sales and marketing is something that we haven't done before in the way that we've done it. As you can see, the hoppings was the first one at the bottom, and you can see the change as we've gone through to Prairie Mews, which was the last one. Very much different, even in those short period of years. Even the quality of the brochures are changing. We've learned an awful lot, but also on the other side of this, we've had to educate the agents who we are. Suddenly we came out of the blue, building open market housing in North Norfolk. Why, who are we, what is it? So there was a massive education for both sides, and we had to find the right agents who would listen, and I think we did. They really get it, and they sell our shared ownership alongside our market housing quite comfortably, and so they should be able to. The whole thing, as you can see, you wouldn't really know, apart from some of the size of the buildings maybe, where any of the tenures are in the scheme, which is what we wanted to achieve. And I think it's absolutely right to try and take away the stigma, which unfortunately is with the affordable housing sector. What are we doing now? So relationship with North Norfolk is really very good, and with us, and we've got a number of opportunities up there, you can see. We're just about to submit planning for Corpusty, but we've got the other ones on there, which are going through, and Hindringham goes at the end of July. We've got sites and design as well. We're working very closely with parish councils with these, and now we've just taken the model to work in Broadland. Great Hockham is literally going on site as I speak, and with Smiths at Honingham, and North Elmer is Tuddenham behind them. We've got a number more as well. We're trying to get the model to work in Kings Lynn area. We've been working very closely with a developer over there to try and get a series of sites to work. But we've also used this model in the city of Norwich as well. So Canary Quay is based on this model. It's based on the model of market housing, okay, in one location, but in the end we're on the last phase now with market housing and shared ownership, and it's worked really well there, and sales have been absolutely excellent. So this is Hindringham, which goes at the end of the month to planning in July. As you can see, we've got a real mix of housing again, using our standard house types all the way through. So fingers crossed that will get planning, but that is a mixed tenure site again. And that's the back of it. So that's just opposite the school, if anybody knows Hindringham. Oh no, I wanted to take that out, so I'm gonna move on that. I thought that had gone. So, and this is Corpusty, which I just want to explain. We've bought one side of the road at Corpusty, and we've bought a piece of land at the bottom of Corpusty at auction last November. It's the surface water constraints really, and this goes into our future thinking as well, about how we deal with embodied carbon in the future. And a lot of we've worked out through various calculators we've built for embodied carbon is that a lot of it is in the infrastructure of the site. I love concrete and I don't love concrete, I think, and I certainly don't like the amount of pipe work we're having to put in and to hold water and all the other bits and pieces. So what we did was bought a piece of amenity land at the bottom, as you can see, and we're working with Norfolk Rivers at the moment to look at ponding. So we're using that for surface water. The Wensum, actually, would you believe, is the bottom of that as well, which is very lucky, so we can then release it into the river. So they do foul as well. They've done a fantastic project up at Inglesthorpe on foul drainage as well, and that's something I'm talking to them at the moment as well, so we can actually use the ponds to get the clean water out of the foul as well. This is all about our biodiversity, as you can see. This is even with the heron in there. This is how we're sort of trying to get that to work, which is, I think, is a fascinating. First time we've done it, but we've got this one here, and we've got one up at Rowton, which I've near enough bought at Wildlife Park, which is doing exactly the same. And when you do the carbon capture type calculations, and water is way better than trees, I'm being told now, learning as we go. But actually, to do this is fantastic. People will say, look, you've got to look after it, but we build that in. You build it in, and we work with local groups to be able to do that and look after that in the future. So it's just having the time to do it. So a bit of COVID time in the future. Sales performance has been superb. I think we're hearing this all the way through the marketplace, but it has been really good. We've got one remaining house in Binham, which is now under offer. So we'll be sold out in North Norfolk by the end of August. So it's exceptional, really, when we weren't market housing providers. We were chuffed to bits, and okay, the market's gone with us, but we could have got it seriously wrong. Consultations through COVID, we moved to virtual consultation rooms. So we moved pretty quickly to that. I think June was our first one we did last year. We used an ACOM system, and Ingleton Wood have some technology as well. So we've used both systems, which have worked really well. The only problem we've had is defects process. If we've had some, it's been complicated, of course, by COVID, and trying to get the expectation of customers. So this was the Ingleton Wood consultation room. It's quite clever. I'm not marketing it, but it was really, really clever. And the ACOM one does exactly the same. So depends. The ACOM one's a little bit more sophisticated, but it depends what level of development you've got, which one you use. I think South Norfolk have just launched the ACOM one actually on their consultation on the smaller sites, which is quite an interesting thing to do. So that's worked really, really well. We've going back to a hybrid, I think, in the future. So my final bit, I think I'm still in time, Ian. So climate change, that's the big one. We had a board away day last week to talk about our next stage of the work we're doing around decarbonisation. You can imagine our existing stock is certainly a lot worse of an issue, or a lot worse of an issue. That's not good English, but it's it's much more difficult than the new build. In terms of the new build, I think in operational energy terms, in zero carbon, we are pretty well there. It's really how much more the frames of our buildings are going to have to work to counterbalance some of the stuff we can't do in the existing stock. So it's really and Ian loves this, is really if we go back to passive or not, or get very close to it. So our frames are working very, very hard, and that might be the way. And then, of course, we bolt on the three golden threads, you know, the PV, air source or ground source, and storage. You know, it's really going to be a combination of that. Shove that on the frame, and happy days, I think. So I think, you know, in terms of zero carbon operationally, we're near enough there. And as I said, future home standard of 2025, our frames are very, very close to it already. So we're not seeing major uplifts in prices on that, even though I know there is in terms of construction at the moment, because we're nearly there. We're just normally saying it's normal construction for us now. So that's that. I think the embodied is an interesting issue for us in the future, and much more decisions to be made. Do we go modular? So take the investment out of Norfolk at the moment. I'm hoping there'll be more firms do set up close by. But you know, most of it is Yorkshire, dare we say it, Yorkshire and the Midlands. So is that something where we go in the future? I personally, if you ask me, I think it's right for certain solutions, and we're using it. We've got some going up at the end of the first week of August in Norwich. So some actually full modular coming in on a site, flats. But I think it's for certain solutions. I don't think it will be driving the whole of it. And then we think, well, if that's the case, then what system do we use? Do we move from traditional? We're using a lot of light gauge steel at Canary Quay. So we've got used to that now. Do we go back to timber frame? Timber's expensive, as we know, and going up. Do we go that way? So to help the passive side. You know, I think it's these embodied carbon questions about where we go, what materials do we use, all the other bits and pieces are going to be more complicated for construction than the operational. I think operational, we've probably all got our heads around it. We've just got to go and do it. So I think that's the case. But embodied is going to cause us a problem, I think. And it will then, if we think supply chains are bad now, you know, that could impact our supply chains in the future as well. So that's my thoughts, and my thoughts are probably are getting more together on that. I can see us going to passive, I'll be honest with you, and I can see us going back to timber, to be honest with you. But then, of course, we've got all the fire stuff to go on top of that as well. In terms of biodiversity, incredibly important. I love working with Norfolk Rivers. They are mad, and they're great people to work with. And we're trying to find more and more of these people out there that can help us. We're not shying away from all this additional stuff we've got to do in planning. We're actually embracing it, and as you can see, trying to buy a little bit more land to be able to do that. And the other point about in terms of our standard house stuff, standard house layouts, we're reviewing them now. Okay, with COVID, everybody's talking about offices and everything else, but it's not just that. I think it's all the kit we've got to put in the future as well. We're actually trying to re-look at all our standard house layouts to make sure that we can get all the stuff in that we need for zero carbon, or the way that we're going to run power or storage or whatever in the future as well. So we're looking at all that now, making sure, and I think my prediction is that we could be at zero carbon very, very shortly. In terms of operational, in terms of embodied, I think we've got a much longer journey to go, much longer journey to go, and we're going to put out a pathway over the next 10 years, I think, to achieve that. So I think, Ian, that's it. It's just my acknowledgements, really. Thanks to everybody that's done all this. There's loads more people as well. I always miss them with any project, but and that is it. That's me done. Great.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks very much. That's a very informative chat and explanation of what you're doing there. I really liked your comment about landscape first, actually, because I think that's something which we all are doing more now, as you are creating communities as opposed to just building houses.
Yeah.
Particularly when you've got a large enough scheme, not sort of 5 or 10 houses, but maybe 20, 30, you can create that community which is going to last for the future as well. We've got one question just at the moment, and so we'll go to that now, and then any other questions that may come in. So Gavin Jones, how much of a challenge is it to match the local design of each village whilst using standard house types?
Thank you, Gavin, for that one. It is a massive challenge. It really is, but it doesn't take an awful lot to be able to turn buildings round, or piece them together with something, or put them alongside each other, or actually mix and match them as well. So you have different roof heights going through. We've got quite a range of standard house types, so it's not as difficult as it sounds. The biggest issue I have is trying to mix the small with the bigger. That's the biggest issue, but we seem to be getting around that with landscaping and the way that we do that. It's not as bad as it sounds, and we're using an awful lot of different materials as well in terms of where we are. We still puncture holes in buildings a little different where we are. We're still using the standard floor plates, but you're putting your windows in different places. You can maximize that change through that design. So I don't, it's not as hard as people make it out, I don't think, anyway.
Andrew, what's your approach when you're doing your mixed private and affordable? Are you pepper potting, or are you clustering the affordable together?
No, it's all the way through. So we could have a row of terrace houses, which is they're one shared, one rented, one market. We mix it all the way through. The biggest challenge was Binham, and I talk openly about this because we had different price angles there. We started at about 500,000 and went upwards, and so that's a really interesting different concept for people when you're building that sort of size house or type of house alongside other tenures. But we've been able to mix it. We clustered a little bit on a courtyard there. Put shared ownership and affordable in terms of where we've got a bungalow type courtyard, but actually we've done it all the way through. If you go to Binham and go down the main road as you come into the scheme there, you wouldn't know, Ian. You just wouldn't know which ones are which. You could try and guess, but we don't have the prickly bushes outside the affordable anymore. We don't have the multicolored front doors anymore. It's all that stuff, and you can blend it in.
And your sales of the privates then went well alongside that.
Yeah, Binham took a bit longer because we had some different types of housing up there in terms of design, but it went really well. And we had a few customers going, we don't want to live alongside affordable housing. Well, that's fine. You go buy somewhere else. You've got a choice what you want to do. We're not gonna say buy, but actually the people who have bought. We've had a lot of local people buy on that scheme, which I think is really interesting and really quite exciting, to be honest with you. Some of them have downsized in the village of Binham and then bought on the site, and I think that sort of speaks volumes, really, that they're really happy with their community and their village, and they realise that they're living alongside the people they've lived alongside for donkey's years. So it's really exciting. I think it's brought some of the villages together. It's brought some of the people in those villages together. So and we continue to do that. Trunch is just amazing, really. That the parish council actually loved that scheme in Trunch, and that has really brought the village together, as you could hear in the video.
Yeah, well, I think so. I pass on my also congratulations to you on the winning awards. I think what you are developing is some very, very nice, fantastic, long-standing developments which will stand the test of time, because you're creating community, and the fact that you're building to retain and building to own, aren't you?
Yeah.
60% or so, whatever, affordable, you're building to own. So you take a very different approach in terms of not only building the quality, but also building the sort of smaller adaptability for those houses for the future as well. And so that different approach maybe also supports the private houses in those locations, because you're managing the public open space as well. And so the whole area is retained, managed, and looked after for the future, for everyone's benefit, So yeah.
I couldn't put it better, Ian.
No, great. So well done, Broadland House. So well done, Andrew. Thank you very much for the talk today. It's been very interesting, and I do appreciate your time. We haven't got, I don't think, any more questions. Let me just see. Let me just double check. I'm not so sure.
There's one in the chat, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gone now. Is that still there? I couldn't see.
Yeah, there's one on the Q&A, and there's one on the chat. I've got it if you want it.
There you go. Here we go. Hannah Wooler. Yep. Do you find there was a benefit in the certification of the passive house scheme? Would you go for full certification if you were to start passive house again?
Hannah, that's a naughty question, and you know that's a naughty question. We did certify first time at Formston. You must be aware of that probably with the question. Would I certify again? I don't think I need to. I'll be honest with you. Sorry, Passive House Trust. I probably don't need to, as long as I can get the specification right in the contracts and we've got the right people building. I probably don't need to. Then again, you'll probably find out I have. It really depends on where the association goes with that, I think. But I'm still not. I don't necessarily think we probably need to. We need to probably get it right for us, and that might mean I don't go. People say, "Oh, it's no point in not going full Passive House," but I don't know. You got to do it for where the model works for you. I think we've done the principles for years, and we'll probably keep doing it that way. So that's sort of the answer in a roundabout way.
Yeah, great. So if there are no other questions, thanks everybody. Thank you, Andrew, again. Just a couple of bits about the forum. We don't have any more talks planned at the moment in the diary. We do have another couple that we are talking to at the moment, so hopefully we can bring those forward fairly soon. Just a quick reminder though, summer reception is on Thursday, the 16th September, 6 p.m. We have had a very good take-up of tickets so far, so don't miss out on the opportunity to join everybody for those drinks. Tickets are still available. And there was going to be a quiz, I think, in July, but that's now been moved because of COVID restrictions, and so a date in October will be brought forward and informed you all soon. So yeah, I think we're about done, aren't we? Is that anything else, Jan?
I've got no other questions. No.
Okay, well, thanks again, Andrew, once again. It's a brilliant talk. I really found
Pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, we'll catch you all again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, really.
Absolute pleasure. Not a problem at all. Okay. See you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.